Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing tonight? Welcome to the live stream. My name's Carol. You're watching the Piedmont Trails channel, and tonight is going to be about updates on the Great Wagon Road and other colonial road investigations that we have discovered throughout the past years. So we're taking a break with our colonial, sharing our colonial favorite records. We got to Great Britain and then we took a little break. So hope everyone's doing well. Nice to see you guys. Hello, Melissa and Beverly and Tyler's here and Charles. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining me this evening. I want you guys to join in with the conversation, but ask your questions, offer your opinions, offer your evidence of what you have found along these historic trails. And I'm going to share with you what we have discovered and bring you updates with the Great Wagon Road Project. So let me just look at my notes. Sorry for the late start. You guys had a unexpected little thing I had to take care of, but that's all taken care of now. So bad thing with going with these live streams, you just never know what will happen from 1 minute to the next. Let me know that you can hear me okay. I didn't even check my microphone or anything before I was able to go on live this evening. Okay, like I said, we're going to share updates. I want you to feel free to offer your comments, your suggestions, as we discuss the past 6 years of our research, our in-depth research with colonial roads. That's when the Great Wagon Road Project started, was back in 2019, and I have experience going through colonial roads for many, many years, but I haven't conducted such an in-depth study as what we have done during the past 6 years. So this has been a learning curve with me as well, especially in discovering the actual routes of these roads and when they actually appeared. It's fascinating to learn, and it has been a struggle at times to learn too. Okay, so but just I want to reiterate to feel free to offer your comments and suggestions and opinions. We welcome them. By learning more about the roads, you will open up a whole new world about your ancestors, and that's the truth. You will. It just opens up a whole new world. You will come across resources that otherwise you would never even think of. And so, yes, it does open up a whole new world. We are covering a lot of material tonight, so I hope that you will all stay with us as we dig deep about the roads and that our ancestors used. All colonial roads have a fascinating history. All doors and all hearts should be open, wide open, to receive the treasures that each one has to offer. Over the past 40 plus years, I've extensively studied genealogy and history. Most of you guys are aware of that. And my journey would not be complete without the colonial roads. It would not. I have found some fascinating information about my ancestors due to me researching the roads. These dirt routes that lined the landscape throughout the 17th and 18th centuries were much more than roads. They connected families and they connected colonies. But the most important characteristic about them is that they drew a breath into change. Can't reiterate that more than enough. I mean, that is so important. Roads were about change. Sometimes the change was welcoming, and sometimes it was met with despair and separation. But without the colonial roads, dreams would remain hidden, and opportunity and freedom, they would be only words spoken, not lived, waiting for another day. And don't underestimate the early roads. Don't. I find so very little information, truthful and factual information about the colonial roads online. And even in books. And books about the colonial roads are rather rare. So be mindful of what you read and see and experience it for yourself. And don't underestimate the colonial roads. Experience it for yourself, because what I'm talking about, take your time in learning it. Take your time in learning it and researching it. And you will not be disappointed if you do that. Just take your time, take a deep breath, and research it the way that is best for you. Everyone has their own unique, different techniques. 6 years ago, I began the Great Wagon Road Project, and this journey has actually changed my life forever. It really has. Piedmont Trails is the only group who has studied in depth the original route, mile by mile, of this historic road. Our discoveries have allowed the myths and the legends of the road to step aside and allow the truth to be heard. And there's been many truths that we have shared during the past few years with all of you guys. We are so blessed to be part of this chapter for the Great Wagon Road. At times we thought that the proof of the original route would never be known, but we didn't give up, and we believed in our goal. Because of our strength and determination, the Great Wagon Road revealed its secrets, and what a fascinating yet simple road it was and still is. The original Great Wagon Road traveled 494 miles, exactly, 494 miles. The only other route that measures longer as a true wagon road during this same time period is the Trader's Path. But this route was just only a wagon road for 387 miles, while the western sections still remained a horse path until after the American Revolutionary War. So it was the Great Wagon Road. One of the biggest misunderstandings about the Great Wagon Road is the people who traveled it. I watched a documentary the other day. I'm not going to say which one. But it proclaimed that the Great Wagon Road was known for the Germans and the Scots-Irish who traveled down it. And that was the main group of people who traveled along the Great Wagon Road. You know, like I said, I personally studied this road for many years, and tonight I want to set the record straight on that. The Great Wagon Road welcomed everyone along its weary miles, everyone. But if we had to single out one group of people who traveled this road the most, let me say that it represented the indentured and the enslaved and the poor above everyone else. Not singling out a certain type of people of German or Scots-Irish, but it brought to light the indentured and the enslaved and the poor. With 80% of the colonial population indentured or enslaved during the late 17th century, the next generation sought change, and they sought a new direction. And it was these people who sought the change and wanted a new chapter in their lives. It was these people who traveled along the Great Wagon Road, and they came from everywhere. Okay, I want to set that straight. In other words, many of the travelers who used the Great Wagon Road were once held in bondage, or their parents were, or they had experiences with their families who were. These people were united in many, many different ways, many ways. Even though their languages may have been different, their customs may have been different, they were united on a journey of a lifetime. So if others want to label the people who traveled the Great Wagon Road, they reached a higher status during the colonial period, and the majority of them succeeded. In other words, what I'm saying here is the families who took it upon themselves to travel south during the Great Migration years, and they traveled along the Great Wagon Road, most of them succeeded in establishing themselves, their families, and prospering due to the fact that they traveled south and settled in a new area. Okay. All right, let me go to my next little section, and I'll say what I was going to say then. If we've learned anything about these colonial roads, we've learned that it takes a great deal of effort and time to thoroughly research them. It's not easy, okay? No one has taken the amount of time needed to actually prove these roads with paper documents and ground study like we have here at Piedmont Trails. The Great Wagon Road traveled through 5 present-day states and was the longest continuous wagon road in 1750. And that's where tonight's discussion starts, is in 1750 to 1777. So if your ancestor traveled from Pennsylvania to North Carolina prior to 1760, It is most likely that they traveled the Great Wagon Road to the Yadkin River, North Carolina. That was the hot spot to be. And I want to get in a little bit deeper on the Yadkin River in North Carolina. There were over 100 families living along this waterway before 1746 that we've been able to prove with documentation. Why is this important? Because the land office for the Granville lands was not opened until 1746. Now, some people will say, well, those people were squatters. Or some people may say, they were very smart. They got a head start and they picked out their lands and they were ready. The surnames like Gamble, Linville, Boone, Bryan, Dunn, Hughes, Cathy, Sherrill, Kennedy, Seal, Holmes, Gillespie, Brandon, Templeton, Locke, Graham, and many, many others were among the first who settled along the Yadkin River where the Great Wagon Road ended at Trader's Ford in present-day Salisbury before 1746. By 1753, travelers noted in journals and land deeds proven documentation about the local homes that were coming up along the Great Wagon Road, local businesses. By the time 1760 come around, about every 10 miles, you're running across a home or a business along the Great Wagon Road. About every 10 miles, from Philadelphia to present-day Roanoke. Now, after Roanoke, it became a little bit less populated, but by 1760, that's how populated the Great Wagon Road was, from Roanoke to Philadelphia, every 10 miles. One of the most popular questions that we get concerns the actual route of the Great Wagon Road and the other routes. But let me be clear, the Great Wagon Road was the only wagon road that traveled from Philadelphia to the Potomac River before 1744. So there's another date for you guys. The only one. It was the only wagon road. As with any major road, small connecting roads will begin to emerge as time goes by. And this is true with the Great Wagon Road. Years ago, we were under the assumption that the Great Wagon Road was a small footpath until after the Lancaster Treaty of 1744. I've written articles on that and placed it on Piedmont Trails. And I have also, I'm pretty sure, I've got several videos stating that very same thing. Well, the evidence proves different. Okay? The evidence and documentation proves different. It was not just a small footpath. It was a wagon road. It was a major road in Philadelphia, from Philadelphia to Lancaster in the 1720 decade, and it also continued through Pennsylvania down into Maryland in the 1720 decade. The road did not pass through York, Pennsylvania. That is not the Great Wagon Road. The Great Wagon Road did not pass through Gettysburg. It did not pass through Frederick, Maryland, or Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. It did not. It did not pass through Lynchburg, Virginia. And it did not pass near the Wachovia tract named by the Moravians in North Carolina. All of these places have at one time or another been named as historic locations along the Great Wagon Road. You can find them on various different videos on YouTube. You can find them on social media, where all of these places have proclaimed, hey, we have the Great Wagon Road traveling near us. It's just not true. Everybody wants to lay claim to the Great Wagon Road because of its historical significance. And also they want to share awareness, I'm sure, of the Great Wagon Road. But it's so important that we share the truth about the colonial roads and the truth about the Great Wagon Road. So with all of these places, there are some of these locations that actually have signs up, historical signs. The Great Wagon Road traveled here. It did not. Well, I can name 3 or 4 signs that I know of in North Carolina where they proclaimed that the Great Wagon Road traveled there. And then other historians will say, well, the Great Wagon Road changed over time. And as it changed over time, then the road must have moved. The road did not change. It wasn't the road that changed. The roads connecting to it is what changed. The Great Wagon Road never changed. It was the roads that joined into the original Great Wagon Road that changed the landscape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these major migration trails and roads by decade. I'm going to start from 1720, and then I'm going to go to the 1770 decade, 1770s, just a few years before the American Revolutionary War. And I'm going to tell you where these roads are, which states they are presently located. If you get your timelines ready, you can kind of pinpoint and take an early guess on which roads your ancestors traveled. And I also want to encourage everyone to share your thoughts, share your comments. It's important that we discuss history. I'm open in answering your questions tonight. Throw them at me. I'll do the very best that I can. I have one of my Great Wagon Road maps up on my screen so I can see it if I need exact detail. And I also have my other colonial maps, one of them up tonight as well. My main goal tonight is to give you these updates on the Great Wagon Road, but to also encourage you to research the roads, because it is so important with your family genealogy. All right, so when I go through these roads by decade, get your timelines ready and keep in mind that many families also sailed the eastern coast. A lot of people forget that, but many of them did sail the eastern coast to reach their destinations. And, they could easily came up the James River into Virginia, and many of them did that in order to get on the trader's path at Petersburg in Virginia and then travel south from there. Many families from Delaware did this. They did not travel all overland. And many of the families who traveled from the New England areas also did the same. So keep that in mind. Many families did sail a portion until they probably got into Virginia or North Carolina, and some sailed to South Carolina. Okay? A lot of people forget that. I wanted to put that out there for those who are having difficulty time finding the proof on which roads your family traveled. They may not have traveled, they may have sailed. This data is the most current information that we have on hand for the roads that I'm about to name from our colonial road studies and projects. And all of these roads that I name were major colonial migration routes during this time period. Okay? Are you guys still with me? All right. 1720 decade. The Great Wagon Road was a wagon road migration route in Pennsylvania and in Maryland. 1720 decade. The Trader's Path was a major migration trail in North Carolina and in South Carolina in the 1720 decade. Wagon Road. Kiowee Trail was a major route in South Carolina during the 1720 decade. Okay? So there's 1, 2, 3. 1730 decade. The Great Wagon Road is in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia in the 1730s. The Trader's Path is in North Carolina and South Carolina and Virginia. It has been extended into Virginia. Kiowee Trail is now in South Carolina and North Carolina and extends into western sections of Tennessee. That's in the 1730 decade. 1740 decade. The Great Wagon Road is in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. The Trader's Path is in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, and Georgia. The Kiowee Trail is in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And now we have the Long Island Road in Virginia. Three Notched Road in Virginia. The Uchee Trail in South Carolina and Georgia. And these are all in the 1740 decade. 1750, Great Wagon Road is still in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. The Trader's Path is still in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. The Kiowee Trail is still in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. The Long Island Road is in Virginia and hasn't been extended into Tennessee. The Three Notched Road is in Virginia. UT Trail is in South Carolina and Georgia. And now we have the Carolina Road in Virginia and North Carolina. Braddock's Road in Maryland and Pennsylvania. And the Cape Fear Road in North Carolina. This is during the 1750 decade. 1760 decade, we still have the Great Wagon Road in the same areas, okay? Trader's Path is still in the same areas. So is the Kiowee Trail. The Long Island Road is becoming very popular, still in the same areas, Virginia and Tennessee. The Carolina Road is in Virginia and North Carolina and has now extended into Maryland, crossing over the Potomac River. Cape Fear Road is still in North Carolina, and now we also have a new wagon road called the New River Road, extending from northwestern sections of North Carolina into Tennessee. In the 1770 decade, wagon roads were present throughout the middle and southern colonies, and there were many options that were available depending on the location. I also want to say here that during the 1770 decade and 20 years prior, that colonial politics and colonial status play a very important role with colonial roads and early settlements. Also, during the onset of the French and Indian War, many military forts and roads were constructed, such as Braddock's Road. These new roads were considered as safe routes. They were safer to travel, and because they traveled from port to port, and a lot of families would use those during those time periods. It was during the 1770 decade that Boone's Trace appeared in Virginia to Kentucky, from Virginia to Kentucky. Okay? You guys still with me? All right, all of these roads have a fascinating history, and each one played a significant role during the Great Migration. You will find the historic paper trail along the roads themselves, from land deeds to tax records, store ledgers to journals and diaries, church documents to lonely graves along the road. Each of these offer proof and facts about the people who settled along the road and the people who traveled it. Some roads were more popular than others, and as time passed, some roads totally disappeared into the landscape. I believe that the colonial roads are our gateway to the past, but are often overlooked or forgotten. And another thing to remember is always remember that families traveled in groups and would often settle next to each other after they arrived to their new destination. That's very important. And also be mindful of what material you find online and in books. There is so much incorrect information out there about colonial roads. It's really bad. When we started the project, we were excited because we had found all of these books and all of this, even videos and documentaries and different things from museums stating how the road traveled. And we were excited because we thought it was going to be an easy task. And when we came across information that was contradicting everything that what we originally thought the road would be, then we knew what was ahead of us, and it's been something else ever since. Don't get me wrong; I'm very happy that we began the project and are continuing in it and near completion of it. I'm very thankful for that. But it has been very tedious, and at times we've been wary about sharing information because it's just totally different from what we've always been told. And also, a lot of the other routes that I had mentioned here, there's very little information about them, and yet they were very popular. And there were some routes that I mentioned that they seem to think that like, for instance, the Carolina Road, many people still think this. The Carolina Road and the Great Wagon Road are one and the same road. They are not. They are totally different roads, emerged at totally different time periods and for different reasons. Get very passionate about them roads. Okay. Regarding the Great Wagon Road, everyone wants to claim that their town or city lies along this historic road. They just forget about the other roads They just want to lay claim to the Great Wagon Road. Okay. And many proclaim this as fact with signs, parks, and literature. And I find it so interesting that some of the most important areas along the Great Wagon Road are not even recognized at all today. At all. The Great Wagon Road started as a hunting trail between the Iroquois and the Cherokee and the Catawba Indians. When you think about that and you think about where these tribes were actually located, you quickly realize how ridiculous many of these false claims really are. Okay? Now, I'm going to sit here. You guys, if you have questions for me, then that's fine. I am here tonight to answer your questions. If you want to know more about a particular route that I named for a certain decade, I'm here to answer you or help you out or point you in the right direction. If you have questions about studying colonial roads, which way should you go, I'm here for you. I've got notes here about the wagons in which they traveled, dimensions and things of that nature and how they were built. If you want more information about that. Waterway crossings. If you want to know about local taverns, store ledgers, how you can get a hold of some of those, or where do you even begin in researching your family. The timeline is the key. That's the key. You've got to get your timeline down, because if you don't, it's like you're researching the library with the lights off. You've got to get the timeline down. And the best way to do that is to locate the very first record that's available for your ancestor in the location that you're starting from, and then work your way back. You've got to get the arrival date when they arrived at their final destination. And once you get that and you start studying the neighbors surrounding them, because 9 times out of 10, they settle near one another. Now, it's not like that they were always near one another, but these groups, these families traveled in large groups. And we have tracked and were able to locate many of them. I've shared several that arrived in Rowan County during specific years. And we've been able to trace their steps and when they left and how long it took them to travel and the date of their arrival and what they did. And some of these families even moved in with each other. They built a temporary shelter and they all lived together. That's not rare. We have ran across that as well. But getting your timeline is the most crucial place to start. Say, for instance, in your timeline is around 1750 to 1755. Well, then you refer back to your major migration routes that were available then. And then you start from there and start with the location in which they arrived. And if it was North Carolina or South Carolina, where were they? And then start and work which migration routes were available in that area, and then work your way back. If your ancestors migrated early, then it's easier for you to pinpoint your route because there's not that many routes available before 1750. So if you know for sure that your ancestor did that, then there's only a few routes that they could have taken. And then once you start that, and if you know for sure it was the Great Wagon Road, then start digging in deep on how the Great Wagon Road traveled and where possible records may be. Had a friend the other day, they located a family member that they were not aware of it, but they were buried at Timber Ridge Presbyterian Church in Virginia, and the Great Wagon Road passed by there, and they were able to locate the grave right there in that church. No other family members were buried there, but they were able to locate that one missing person. Okay, you guys are being quiet. Don't be shy. Okay, don't be shy, because if you don't have any questions or anything, then just, that's fine. That means that's good. Then you've got the answers. Okay, and you're doing great. Share them. Share them with everybody. Uchee Trail was very popular in Georgia. I was just trying to think of other things that we've not shared. Trader's Path was the first wagon road in North Carolina. And eventually the Trader's Path allowed families to travel further west into Alabama and Mississippi, all the way to the Mississippi River. was one of the first western migrations, fully west migrations. And yeah, it's got a very long history. And there's people in settlements in North Carolina that are not even aware that, hey, our area should have a sign, or we should have a memorial, or we should discuss this and share it with others and do more research on it, because the first wagon road in North Carolina passed through our area. But, there's, I don't know of anyone that has a sign up for that, for recognizing Trader's Path at all. I don't. Okay. Nolichucky River in Greene, Tennessee. See, I'm not sure if they may have traveled the Great Wagon Road, as I can't find a great map. If they traveled through the Nolichucky River in 1770s, there was a road that traveled through present day, possibly from Virginia. They would have probably taken the Long Island Road. But then traveling into Nolichucky, that would have been way out of the way for them. They would have had to go south from there. So I would make sure that, Tyler, that you think they left from Virginia. Most of the people who settled along the Nolichucky River, most of them actually left from North Carolina or South Carolina. And they traveled along the old mountain road through present-day Morganton, crossing over the Catawba River, and they crossed over in that area. If they did leave out from Virginia, then they most likely would have traveled down the Long Island Road. Long Island Road joined with the New River Road coming up from North Carolina too. This was a very popular route. Long Island Road was prevalent in 1750, and actually, I didn't include that in the 1740 decade, did I? Let me make sure. I was almost about to, if I didn't. I did. And there's a reason why for that, because that was a wagon road. It was definitely a path, but it was a wagon road almost into Tennessee at that time during 1740s. So, Tyler, I rambled on, but I hope that helped you. As far as finding a great map, you're not going to find a great map showing the Long Island Road. Not a great map until, I would say after 1770, 1780. And then what they name it is, they call it New River Road. A lot of the surveyors refer to it as that. And then even later in 1790, it's referred to as the Wilderness Road. Oh, another big mess. Okay. Melissa says, Wilkes County, 1748, Surrey County, 1753. Melissa, what's your question about Wilkes in 1748 and Surrey in 1753? Great Wagon Road traveled very close to those areas. It traveled in sections of Wilkes and sections of Surrey County, North Carolina. Okay, Tyler showing the routes at the time. Where should I start looking for 1770? Make sure you got your location of departure correct in Virginia. Make sure it's not North Carolina or it's somewhere else. And then start with the Long Island Road and work your way through that. Concentrate on families, Tyler, too, that live close to your ancestor. Really research into them and see if they're related to one another, if they've married into each other, to other families, or if they're close. And make sure that if they left with that family, with your family, they could have traveled with them to Tennessee. Ellie says, hello from North Florida. Sorry to be late, but glad I caught you live. Oh, we're glad to have you, hon. Thank you for joining us. 2 of the early family births in North Carolina. Gotcha, Melissa. Well, yeah, Melissa in Wilkes in Surrey, the Great Wagon Road was very close. I told you guys, I think in an early video, we had proof and documentation that the Great Wagon Road traveled west of present-day Pilot Mountain. And most of the historians, several organizations and groups and historical societies will say that the Great Wagon Road traveled east of Pilot Mountain. It did not. It traveled west, and it traveled west of Yadkin River. Let's see. Tyler says, I'm sorry. I meant North Carolina. I think they were. Okay, if they left, that makes more sense. If they left North Carolina during the 1770s, and I think I've spoken to you about this before, Tyler, I think I wanted you to look more into the North Carolina Regulators movement because your family left in the early 1770s, because a lot of people who left in North Carolina and traveled west into the western mountains of North Carolina and to eastern sections of Tennessee along the Nolichucky River were regulators. Many of them. Many of them. And they would have traveled along the route known as the Mountain Road at that time. Travels through present-day Morganton, North Carolina, crossing through the Catawba River and then heading west that way. Would the Kings Highway going through Tar Heel, North Carolina along the Cape Fear be the Cape Fear Road? No. My King family's land grant from the 1730s is in this location. Kings Highway is a totally different road. And, you know, when we first began studying on the Kings Highway, we thought it was a continuous route along the whole eastern seashore. It was not. And we also thought that the majority of it was a wagon road. It was not. It was some places you would lose the trail. It was just terrible. But the Cape Fear Road was totally different. It originated in present-day Fayetteville along the Cape Fear River. That's where it's got its name. It was part of the deal, as a lack of a better words, that the Moravians had worked out for the Granville land grant that they acquired. If you note, the Moravians acquired tens of thousands of acres of land. And part of the deal for them to assume this land was they had to be approved for a road to come from Cape Fear River into their area, all the way to Bethabara and Bethania. And that's what the Cape Fear Road did. Once the road was established and built and constructed by 1754, this became a major migration route for many of the people who were living in eastern North Carolina who wanted to travel into the Piedmont area. It was a new road. It was kept up. It was maintained. People used it quite often. The Moravians used it to get back and forth to their ships along the Cape Fear River and unload their ships and cargo, and that's why this road was created. I included the Cape Fear Road because it became a major migration route after it was created. And it was very important in North Carolina history and moving the eastern families. Path would have been taken from eastern North Carolina into coastal Georgia in the late 1700s. After 1770, you got roads like you kind of do today. The best example I can give you is like during 1750, you only had like roads here and there, and they were really close to little settlements. And then once you got out of those settlements, then you only had your major roads, which were very few then. By 1770s, multiply that by 10. Okay, and then that gives you an idea of how many additional roads were available during the 1770 decade and thereafter. Now, you're talking in the late 1700s, there were many roads from eastern North Carolina that headed into the coastal areas of Georgia. There's many roads. The main roads would have been the Kiowee Trail for portions of it, and portions of that road are still used today. And that would have carried them straight into the northern sections of Georgia, eastern side. Trader's Path would have led them straight into Augusta in that area. And also keep in mind that sailing, getting on a boat on eastern North Carolina and sail to Georgia, down to Savannah, was done often. Melissa says, an answer my question. Okay, good, Melissa. Thank you. You're welcome, Tyler. About 1803, and took flatboats. Yep. Long Island in Tennessee was used for that too. flatboats were used for a while. And also, families who were migrating from western sections of Pennsylvania used flatboats as well to reach the Ohio and portions of Kentucky a lot quicker than what people realize. The Cape Fear River traveled in a northwest direction from present-day Fayetteville into Bethabara and Bethania, present-day Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That's where the road ended in 1754. It began in Fayetteville and ended in the Moravian settlements. It was part of their deal in acquiring the land grant from Lord Granville. Okay. All right, you guys. I want to thank all of you for joining me this evening. If you don't have any more questions, I'm gonna cut it out of here. I hope that all of you will like and share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for all of your support, all of you, for over the past 7 years. We greatly appreciate it here. We do all of this just out of the passion and love that it dwells within our hearts. That's why we do this. There's nothing in it. We're not trying to get 1 million subscribers on YouTube or anything like that. We don't monetize our material. Our website is free for everyone to use. If you want to subscribe to the website, you can be notified of new material, new information that's been posted on there. But yeah, we do this out of our love for history and genealogy. All right, thank you all so much for joining us. The last chapter, I do want to say this before we go. The last chapter of the Great Wagon Road has yet to be written. Okay, and when we get to that point, it's going to be phenomenal. It really is. It's going to be great. I encourage you all to search deeper for the early roads and their stories. And if you get stuck in a certain area, or you really draw a blank and you don't know what to do next, then just let us know. We are bombarded with emails and we get contacted quite a lot, but hey, we get to them eventually. So just let us know. Just shoot us an email and we'll get back to you. All right, you guys, until next time, I want you all to enjoy your journey to the past, and may God bless all of you. Thank you.